Hey guys, I'm Chris from the Silver Symbol channel, and in today's video I've got a pretty cool project to share that I just finished up. I live in New Hampshire and things definitely get cold, and you can see the winter is just beginning to set in, but I had one major problem. I have no heat whatsoever inside my barn. I wanted something that was really affordable, that I could install myself. I chose a pellet stove for a few different reasons. The first is cost. You can get a pellet stove as low as $1,000 all the way up to about $6,000. But additionally, they're super cool because they do actually burn wood pellets. That gives you a flame and you get a much nicer appearance. So if you're in a space that's a little bit more rural, or you just want to have a fireplace, a pellet stove can be a great choice. The other huge benefit of a pellet stove is you can turn them off and on. It's not instantaneous, but it's much quicker than any type of a wood stove. Generally going to get heat in as little as 5 minutes. The other big reason you might want to consider these is that the government is actually paying you to install this. Right now there is a tax credit, meaning they actually pay you that money back off of your taxes. So now let's get started with the project. It all began by ordering the stove. I actually got this one from Amazon. They delivered it right to my door. So you'll either need some help or have something like a dolly like this. And I should also say nothing in this video is sponsored. I picked this one because it really was cheap and it had excellent reviews. Now there are many different safety considerations when you're installing any type of appliance that burns wood, pellets, or anything else. I'm not telling you this is legal where you are. I'm just going to show you what I did and give you some general observations about installing these. Now I'd recommend that you get the stove in place. Now these pellet stoves are also unique compared to wood stoves. You can generally install them very close to walls or even things that are combustible, things like wall board, wood paneling. In most cases the stove can be installed in as little as around 5 to 6 inches. But you need to consult your own local building codes, fire inspectors. Those guys will tell you exactly what is allowed in your area. Another important thing is you need to consider what the stove is going onto. Now here in my barn I've got a concrete floor, it's got this coating, but it's still considered non-flammable. But to raise the stove up just a little bit, I am going to use these bricks. This will make it a little bit easier as I connect the vents. But if you've got a wood floor, you can still use one of these just fine, but you do need to get something to put below the floor. And fortunately, these things are pre-made. They're generally made of tile, concrete, and they look pretty cool, and you can put them underneath your stove, and that meets most code requirements. Your stove needs both air in and air out. That will prevent the stove from sucking the oxygen out of your room. So by getting a stove that has both an intake and an exhaust, you don't even need to think about it. Now when it comes to venting, the main thing you need to be concerned with is you've got to use pipe that's rated for a pellet stove. And this stuff is pretty unique. You might just think it looks like stovepipe, but this is in fact double wall pipe. As we look at the edge of it, you can see it is a pipe within a pipe. It also uses this interlocking system whereby you just simply connect the sections of pipe together, give them a twist, and they will lock into position. Now if you're going to go directly out of your wall, that makes things a lot easier, and there are many different ways you can do it. I chose the simplest, which is to put the pipe going directly out of my wall. Now there are going to be many opinions about this because you can use something like a clean out, you can extend the pipe higher up. There are a lot of different options. When I go outside, the big thing you need to consider is what is around your exhaust pipe. You obviously don't want that pipe too close to another part of your house, a neighbor, shrubs, anything like that. Fortunately for me in the back here, this pipe goes directly over gravel. There's nothing flammable within several feet, and our local codes only require this pipe to be just 12 inches off the ground. But because we do get a lot of snow, that is really low, but I am on the first floor, so unless I wanted to extend this pipe up quite a few feet in the air, I'm going to be comfortable with where I've got it here. And I will have to be cognizant of if we get a ton of snow, 3 or 4 feet, this pipe could get blocked. The next big thing you need to consider is how you get through the wall in your house. Now if you've got vinyl siding, clapboards, whatever you've got, you've simply got to drill a hole or 2 holes through your wall. But this vent system I got is a little bit different. I'm going to cut one larger square hole in the side of my building. I will actually get an air intake and exhaust. I traced out the vent shape, and all I've got to do is cut the section out. Next, I'm going to begin by putting the exhaust side of it, or the outside portion, first, screw it to the side of the structure, and now I can move to the inside to begin connecting up the piping. Next, once you put these sections of pipes together, it would be wonderful if everything was completely airtight. But in my opinion, you do need to seal this pipe a little bit further if you don't want to have any smoke leaks at all. Now, you should always follow your manufacturer's directions who makes the pipe, but here I'm going to put silicone on every one of the seams. This is high temp silicone, specifically designed for this purpose, and then you do need to let it dry for about 24 hours. Now, even though these pipes are locked together with this little tab, that really is not enough. I'd recommend putting additionally a couple of screws in each section. Now one note, these are special tapping screws, but you want to make sure that they're not too long. They only need to penetrate the outer sections of metal. Additionally, I'm going to use this fireproof tape. This is also designed for stovepipes, and this is just kind of like that belt and suspenders approach where I'm putting two different things in place, but quite honestly, I think all I really needed to do was use the silicone. Finally, I've just got to install the air intake hose. Now this is totally different than the exhaust hose because air intake is simply cool outside air coming into the stove to burn up in the combustion chamber. And I've simply got to attach this in place, clamp it using a hose clamp, and on the opposite end, my outside bracket was a 3-inch section. The hose is only 2 inches. These are the types of things that are going to happen to you when installing one of these stoves, so it can simply be solved by getting an adapter. Now at this point, the only thing left to do is power the stove up and try it out. So I've got to get some pellets loaded. And pellets are available everywhere, so if you're off-grid, you're rural, or you just want to have a little bit more fuel independence, pellets can be awesome. They can be stored for a very long period of time. They're not flammable like gasoline, so I'd be much more comfortable to keep a whole stack of these. Finally, pellet stoves do have one Achilles heel, and I'm going to talk about that later in the video along with EcoFlow products, and that is that they do require electricity. Many people think that pellet stoves just run on their own, and there are a few that do. You may have seen this one that's a gravity-fed stove that's available online. And if you're outdoors, you can even get a pellet stove that is a patio heater. This is a super clever idea. This is one that I tested earlier this season, and I'm planning to do a full review in the spring. This thing is awesome. It's stainless steel, it's gravity fed, and this one works beautifully. The issue with pellet stoves inside your house is they need to really have a fan to push that hot air around. Every pellet stove just simply plugs in. You don't need a special outlet, just plugs into a regular 120 volt plug, and now I can go ahead and power the stove up for the very first time. Now with the power on, I can already hear things starting to happen. The way these work, if you're not familiar with pellet stoves, is there is a thing called an auger inside the stove. It essentially screws the pellets down a chute, and they fall into this thing called a burn pot. Now here I'm opening up the stove before I actually fired it up. Air is mixed in and it creates combustion. But the coolest part is you don't need to ever light this stove manually. These all have electric igniters in them. So you basically just turn them on and this thing will cook the pellets until they ignite, and then it just switches over to simply running the blower. So while the stove is running, it's only consuming a tiny amount of electricity just to run the fan. It's only when it's initially firing up and using the igniter that it draws a little bit more power. Now within just about 2 minutes, this sweet stove is already cooking the pellets, and within another 30 seconds, they are already on fire, and this stove is looking cool. And that is a big reason to consider a pellet stove. If you want to see a flame, fireplace, these things are awesome. It gives you a much nicer look, but compared to other things like heat pumps, electric heat, this should be less expensive to run. The government subsidy makes this a little bit more affordable. Whole installation only took me about 2.5 hours. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere like me and you've got a cabin and you want heat, pellet stoves can be a great option because you can bring the pellets there yourself. You're not worrying about a propane truck. Now with a pellet stove, it is the easiest thing to run during a power outage, and the simplest way to get that done is to use one of these portable power stations. Now here, these ones are made by EcoFlow, but in terms of pellet stoves, they are a miracle because you simply just turn them on, take the cord from your pellet stove, plug it into your EcoFlow, and now you've got full electricity. This EcoFlow is really affordable, and this one can power my pellet stove here for about 11 hours. You can also add batteries to this one, and if you've watched my other power station videos, you know EcoFlow makes units that can power your whole house. The other benefit to EcoFlow right now is they're having some special sales because of the Black Friday deals, and for the next 2 days only, they're giving you up to about 60% off. That is the biggest discount that EcoFlow has ever offered on their product line. I've put a link in the description below along with a code you can use for an extra percentage off. Now, I've only been running this stove for about 3 days and I absolutely love it. So if you're looking to heat either your house, barn, garage, shop, consider a pellet stove in the future for you because it really is one of the most affordable methods you can use. And I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already for more videos coming up.